In the darker shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes. The order of the Abercast. We are the brave and bold.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Stigmata Studios presents The Jinn Jihad. The Jinn Jihad kicks your face with myths, mysteries, epic battles, suicide bombers, quirky characters, and divine power armor. In this epic graphic novel, the warrior archangels descend on a city in chaos. It's all-out war. The non-standard assembly battles an ancient terrorist organization, and their ultimate weapon, a corrected, magically enhanced, unstoppable monster, the Jinn. This graphic novel is a wild ride. It's one part distant Arab myth, one part Old Testament angelic vengeance, and one part unique heroic tough guys. Available on Amazon. Get more info on the Jinn Jihad and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
Welcome to the Abercast. We're broadcasting high atop the Stigmata Studios building in downtown Pittsburgh. Thank you for tuning in. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. You know, the Abercast is the official podcast of Stigmata Studios. We're a small indie comic book company that does graphic novels and comic books. Our stories focus on history, conspiracy, the occult, whiskey, violence, and, I don't know, guns. This week, we are going to get into it's actually one of my favorites, and it's one of those conspiracy theories that are real. This is kind of like one of my go-tos. We actually might run a little bit longer than normal this time around because I have a lot of vomitous information. Like I said, this is one of my favorites. So pour yourself or have one of your local ATF agents pour you a Jinn Jihad, because there's going to be a gunfight in Texas tonight. We're going to be talking all about the Waco Branch Davidian Massacre. What? Jinn Jihad. I go over this every week. You get a mason jar, you put a bunch of ice in there, a couple lemon slices, 2 shots of whatever bottom shelf gin you can find, pour the rest of it up with tonic water, and what you got there is you got yourself a formula. A formula for what? A formula for mass distraction, suckers. So buckle up. We're gonna get revved up. Okay, so let's do the tail of the tape here. Let's figure out who's who on each side of this fucking clusterfuck. On one side, we have the Branch Davidians, who are an offshoot of something called the Seventh-day Adventists. They were started in California, but in 1935, the dude who ran them moved to Texas and bought a lot of property and built a community known as Mount Carmel. Yeah, so they moved into Mount Carmel. They built like this compound on the outside of Waco, Texas. Eventually, this prophet, David Koresh, whose original name was Vernon Howell, changed his name to David Koresh, became the leader. Now, there's a lot of funny story. Well, not a lot. There's a couple funny stories with him. Once he got leadership, like some other, one of the other people who I guess were in contention or something, like claimed that he got the other dude's like 70-year-old grandmother pregnant. And there's also this story about this hidden dead body, and the guy was like, let's have a magic, well, I guess it's not magic, let's have a miracle contest to see who could raise this dead body. And David Koresh was like, I'm calling the police. And the cops wouldn't even come out there without any kind of evidence, so people like went out with like cameras and guns and stuff to like try to figure out what was going on, and somebody actually got shot from that. But the thing with the 70-year-old grandma, he granted like an interview, or he was talking to his like parish or whatever, his church, about it. And he was like, look, man, if I could get a 70-year-old woman pregnant, watch out, because I'm God. And the press got a hold of that, and they really rubbed it against this guy, taking it out of context and trying to change it. That's the part of the propaganda war that went on against these Branch Davidians. That was a big part of it. So I usually do like a trigger warning with these things. So if you really love the ATF and the FBI, you don't think they could do any wrong, there's probably going to be a few triggers in here. Also, I'm going to continue on this show without judging these Branch Davidians, or not getting too much into their religion or their politics or their beliefs. I'm just coming at this as if they were human beings, Americans that were protected under the Constitution of these United States of America. That's where I come at this from. I don't judge them, and we'll get in. I know everyone's like knee-jerk reaction because of child abuse charges and all this stuff, but we'll get into that. We'll get into it a little bit later if you want. So yeah, I'm not endorsing Branch Davidians, Seventh-day Adventism, or cults at all. When I look at this case, I look at it as this is a bunch of seemingly moderately peaceful Christians living in a compound together with a stockpile of guns. All right, we're going to get into it. I feel like I'm digging myself into a hole. Okay, so in the early 80s, this other like prophet he's one of my favorite kind of prophets. He was like Paul Muad'Dib. He was a blind prophet named Mark Bro. It's not spelled B-R-O, but I'm kind of bro-y, so that's how I just did it, bro. He's a blind prophet from Hawaii, and he moved to Texas and hung out with these Branch Davidians. And he tried to take over. He tried to hustle in. on Koresh's followers, and eventually Koresh kicked this guy's ass to the curb in 89. But this guy, once he was out, like he felt like he thought that he should have been in charge of this whole thing. So he started talking shit. He was like he would get these television interviews, and he would talk shit about the Branch Davidians and say, well, they're stockpiling guns, and they're like, well, what kind of guns does he have up there? And he's got like 50 caliber machine guns, and also guess what? They're also abusing kids up there. They got a bunch of kids, and I saw some girls, some young girls, I guess, I don't know, leaving Koresh's bedroom at night. And the ATF was like, excuse me? A 50 caliber machine gun? if he's got that, he owes us like $200 for an extra tax. I'll get to that. Anyhow, this guy, and he also started going to, these watchdog groups. Like if you watch Netflix right now, there's a documentary about a guy who would deprogram cult members. He'd like kidnap them and like electrocute them and like unbrainwash them. And he worked for this group. I can't remember. It's like the Council of Cult bullshit. I don't know what it is, but so he would go to these guys, and these guys had like some lobbying money or something. So they were like, they had their finger on the pulse. It was like some kind of cult watchdog thing. Anyhow, so they were able to help shine the light on this thing too. And then on top of all this other stuff, there was this idea that, later they would be accused of having a meth lab. When they start talking about, spoiler alert, when they try to explain the fire that happens a few months at this point in the story, they say that, well, there was a meth lab and that, was probably a part of it. So these guys got like a pretty hefty shitstorm piling up against them. Now, I said earlier about like this child abuse charge or this pedophile thing or whatever. The sheriffs and like the Texas Rangers actually investigated this twice, once in 91 and once in 92. And there's Texas Rangers on record going, look, we never found any evidence against these allegations at all. So I don't know about you. I trust Texas Rangers. Earl McGraw, he never did anything against me. And like the Lone Ranger, besides that last movie, I always liked that guy. So, tuck that in your hat and think about like where these allegations are coming from. This fucking blind bro from fucking Hawaii who's trying to take over this shit. Crush ain't having it, yo. I'd like to see a rap battle against these guys. Okay, so the ATF is a division, or they work under the Treasury Department. And part of their thing is that they are responsible for checking out if people who have guns were taxed properly. So when these fucking guys heard this allegation about this Browning M2 50 caliber machine gun on this property, they bugged out, because literally they were allowed to have that weapon, apparently. They just would have had to pay a $200 extra. So everything that happens from this point on in the story might possibly be because of $200. It reminds me of the paper delivery boy. I want my $200. So every fucking piece of madness, Keystone Cop, psychopathic Guar concert bullshit that happens from this point on in this podcast could possibly be because these guys wanted their fucking $200 for a gun that never. There's no evidence that these guys even fucking had. The Branch Davidians even had. So hold on, I gotta. All right. So the ATF is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. It sounds like a one-stop shop. I kind of like the sound of it. But they wrote up a search warrant for this gun stockpile that this bro from Hawaii had said that they had. Now, what they didn't know, or what they were pretending they didn't know, even though they questioned the local gun shop, and they had bought like 260 something guns from this guy that owned this gun store, and the gun guy actually called Koresh and was like, "Hey, the feds have been asking. I don't think they like all the guns that I've sold you." And Koresh was like, "Well, just have them come out. I'll have them. They can look at it or whatever." The ATF guys declined to do that. They declined to come out and look at this stockpile. But what a lot of people don't talk about when they talk about this stockpile of guns especially after the shit goes down, is that this is how these Branch Davidians were making their living, is they were making their living by going to gun shows and selling and dealing in these firearms. So of course, if that's how you make your living in Texas, is by selling guns, you're going to have a fucking lot of them, because you're going to fucking take them across state lines or wherever, however, and sell them. There's never been any kind of evidence produced saying that they did that wrong. So whatever the legalities of transporting these weapons and stuff are, there's never been any allegations that they did that incorrectly. Like I said, the beef right now is that they think that they have this 50 caliber machine gun in there, and they're tacking on these pedophilia or these child abuse charges. So they draw up this search warrant for a gun stockpile, and they also, like I said, they also threw in this child abuse thing. But where an ATF, the ATF doesn't have anything to do with child abuse. Like that would have been, you know, for the police officers or for the sheriff department. And like I said, it was already investigated by cops and the sheriffs. Okay, so cops and the sheriffs, I say in my notes, not rangers. But there's a documentary on YouTube called Waco New Facts Revealed or something like that, and they have a Texas Ranger going, "Hey man, we looked at it, and there was never any evidence of this bullshit." A lot of this stuff comes from that that documentary, and also a book called In the Ashes of Waco by a guy named Dick Rivas. And I'm telling you, that's a hell of a name for a writer. Okay, so they applied for the warrant in June or July of 92, and the thing of note is that the warrant expired on February 28th, 1993. So all the chessboard is set, my friends. These are the one side are these Branch Davidians, these gun stockpiling Branch Davidians. The other side is what you're going to find out in a couple minutes here to be a bunch of Keystone Cop cowboy motherfuckers called the ATF. And so like I said, the board's all set for the biggest law enforcement clusterfuck in U.S. history. I have got to run upstairs and refresh. I got to run to the Stigmata bar and refresh, and I'll be right back. And we're gonna get into this this clusterfuck, like I said. I thought I was gonna miss my post there. All right, so the stage is set between these crazy apocalyptic Christians, gun stockpilers, and come on, motherfucker, and the ATF. Okay, so on all these after action reviews and interviews that they've had with these ATF people after the fact, when the government was trying to figure out what the fuck happened, you see these guys from the ATF, and they're all like, "Dude, we had the best plan. We fucking figured this shit out, and we drew it up, and we had sand tables, and we ran through it like a whole 100 bunch of times." But when you watch these videos, you're like, these guys don't know anything what they're doing. Anyhow. So, there was actually a document that said that members of the special forces, came in and helped them develop this plan. So anyhow, they got the warrant in like June or July. It expired on this day, February 28th. So they waited till the morning of February 28th. They rolled down this long dirt road, I guess is a driveway to this compound. And it's like they didn't have any like official ATF vehicles. They rolled down on like their pickup trucks and their fucking Jeeps, and like this one red like Ford F-150 something. I'm sure it had like that fake ball sack that swings around on the back of the trailer hitch on there. but it was just carrying like a cattle, like a cattle thing, like a cattle car with like a tarp over it. So all these guys got out and they're like putting on all their gear and they're like, okay, well, come on, hoss, let's get to it. So they formed like this half-assed perimeter around the building, and they said that we have a direct action plan. This plan, from what I can tell, was the forces were divided into 4 teams. They had 2 teams, I think, 2 teams of 4 to go up and put their Home Depot ladders on the gutter and to try to take the roof, and that will also give them access to the windows on the second floor. Then they had the group that was doing the direct frontal assault. So they were basically running right for the front door. And then there was a group that like went around back, hoss, and we'll smoke them out. So they were like in the other side of the chapel. So the idea was the frontal assault guys were to like breach the front door, boom, into the chapel and start clearing it. And the guys on the other side of the chapel were supposed to support them with clearing the chapel out. Now, while this is happening, these two fire teams that are climbing the roof to get access to the second floor were supposed to infiltrate the second floor and work their way down. And I guess the plan was to amass all the Branch Davidians towards the back of the compound and take control of them there. Now they all had like huge amounts of zip ties with them, so they all thought they were all gonna get them amassed and cowed down and zip tied up, hog tied, Texas style, will ride a tornado away, and that was basically their plan. But the problem is that no one knew what the fuck they were doing. So I'm going to start with the frontal assault guys. They were running up, and now their first obstacle that they had was there were 4 dogs. I think they were like Malamutes or fucking Huskies or something. You could see a picture of them all lined up, dead, bleeding out in the fucking lawn, because the first thing this team did is they just blasted all these dogs. And when you watch you can find videos of this all over the place. And when you watch these videos, like, you can hear it. Like, the second these guys get on the move, pow, 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 and you hear these fucking dogs just whining. Hold on. Speaking of whining dogs. So they're blasting these dogs, and they're dying, and they're yelping, and they're bleeding out all over the street. So they're making their move towards the front door. And this is when, according to the Davidians, Koresh poked his head out the door, and he's like, "Hey, what are you all doing? We got women and children in here." And this is when the gunfire at the compound started. They started blasting the door. Koresh gets hit twice. He gets hit once in his side, I think, and once in his wrist. There was another dude who was like he was like the father of Koresh's wife or something. He gets blasted. They get blasted. The doors close. You could see the bullet holes all over the front of this door. I lost my place. They murdered the dogs. They shot Koresh at the door. They opened fire. The ATF, in the rear, they just started opening up, shooting blindly. You could see the ones that were hiding, that were like providing the security behind the different pickup trucks and stuff they brought. They're just shooting at the they're just shooting at the windows upstairs. Like, you can see pictures of these windows with just bullet holes riddled through them. And when you're looking at these videos, it's like they're not taking fire. They're hiding behind a truck, but like, you don't see any fire directed at them. It looks crazy. And then I forgot to mention that this whole time there were 3 Army helicopters. And we're going to get into posse comitatus in a minute. But just this fact that they have these 3 Army helicopters just buzzing around the compound, and they're firing. There's people that are speculating that these bullet entries from coming down from the roof are coming from these helicopters. There's no other stationary place higher than that. And all the Branch Davidians that they actually got to leave, even the kids were like, yeah, these were where the bullet holes from the helicopters were hitting us. And also there was, I can't remember the guy's name. The guy who called 911, like while this was happening, someone actually called 911. They were like, we got 70 guys here shooting machine guns at us, and they have helicopters, and they're shooting machine guns at us. So you can actually hear the machine gun, or you can actually hear the helicopters like buzzing the compound, and you can hear them all terrified, being like, they got machine guns. So this is all totally against posse comitatus, and we're going to get to that in a minute. I just like saying posse comitatus because it sounds kind of dirty. All right, helicopters flying around the compound, firing into the ceiling. All right, so this is the favorite thing to watch. It's like these totally fucked up guys. So it's the guys going, I believe they're on the right-hand side of the two ladder teams. And they go up, and the one guy, it looks like he shoots himself in the fucking leg or the foot on his way up. Like, he's on the ladder, and he reaches for his fucking gun, and it looks like he shoots himself. So he gets up there and he collapses, and he gets his, like a crowbar, and he starts like busting the window out of this crowbar. And the Davidians put this, big, huge black blanket on top, over it. And the guy's like trying to rip the blanket down, and it's not coming down. So they start one of the guys throws a smoke grenade in there. And you're like, well, I don't really see him throw a grenade. Well, I kind of see him throwing something. And then like when the blanket moves, a whole bunch of smoke comes out. So guess what? That's a fucking smoke grenade. Then these three dudes jump into the window. So they're actually inside. So they're going to start trying to snake their way down and get all the Davidians moving towards downstairs where they're going to collect them all, right? Well, something crazy happens where the guy's still laying on the outside of the window. I guess he's trying to provide security, or he's trying to like stay off his leg that he shot. I'm not sure, but he starts taking fire from inside the building. Someone starts shooting at him from inside the window. They just went through, and he starts doing like this spin move, like he's like trying to like do that the breakdance move. And he comes up, and it looks like he sticks his gun in the window and just starts shooting. And then it looks like he takes around to the helmet, and he rolls back, and he climbs back down the ladder, and that's it for him. He's punched out. Well, during all this madness, there were 4 ATF guys that died, and they're saying we're not sure which ones. A lot of people say it was the 4 guys on the other fire team. Some people say it's the 3 guys that went into that window, plus some other dude that got killed on his way off the cattle car. You only hear that once. And I want to know that story. Okay. Yeah, so they're throwing the grenades, they're shooting into the window without looking. You know, and like it's funny because when you listen to the trial or the Senate hearings and stuff, they're all like, "We did it just to save the kids. Like we just wanted to save these kids that were in there." All right, so these 3 cowboys. I'm guessing that the 3 cowboys that went into the window that I just talked about are 3 of the guys that died. That's why I want to know more about this other cat that died is coming off the cattle car somehow. Yeah, so there's this the 911 tape where they call their cops, and they're like, "Hey, we're being assaulted, by the government." And so this shootout went on for hours and hours. It's actually, I think, the longest shootout in United States history. I'm not sure if that's the case or if I just made that up, but it went for a long time. And some places say that the truce happened because of the 911 call. Like the 911 guys were able to sort it out or whatever to get a truce sorted out. But I think it's more likely, and you also hear this, is that the fucking ATF guys ran out of bullets. The Branch Davidians could have just kept shooting for hours. I mean, they had that gigantic gun stockpile, right? But So once they started retreating and there was this truce, all these ATF guys, they're all fucking bleeding. Some of them were on the ground on their hands and knees crying and praying. And there was a cameraman. They actually invited some cameramen with them. They said 3, but you can't find tape of anything that happened at the front door, oddly enough. But this cameraman was like following them, and these ATF guys who just got their fucking asses kicked were like, hey bro, stop filming us, have some respect. And the camera guy's like, yeah, I'm just trying to get out of here just like everybody else. And they fucking swarmed him, and they were like, they threw him to the ground, and they were kicking him and trying to steal his camera. These guys got outclassed. They had the guns. They had the training. They had fucking helicopters with machine guns on them, and they got their dicks handed to them by a bunch of Christians in the high plains of Waco, Texas, in their own church. So, and I'm sorry, I feel bad for these guys that lost their lives or whatever. It seems totally to me like it was a friendly fire or a blue on blue incident, which is, it's terrible. You never want that to happen. And that's why I was kind of wanting to find more information about this guy who died coming off the cattle car. But at the same time, it's like, it was like the fucking Three Stooges out there in like their ATF gear. So, if you don't like me laughing at it, go fuck yourself. The compound gets surrounded at this point in time. And, they're at this time, the ATF are still trying to be in charge. And the guy who's negotiating, the Branch Davidian guy who's negotiating, was like, they cannot be there. Like, this has got to go to someone. The idea that they're there waiting for us to surrender and come out after what just happened is ridiculous. So eventually, Janet Reno, well, I know, Bill Paxton just passed away, but when he got turned into a frog in that weird science movie, that looks like Janet Reno to me. I always associated that, so it's kind of weird. I'm talking about Janet Reno, Bill, and Chet just passed away. But she gave the control to this thing on day 4. She gave the control to this real jello head named Jeff Jamar from the FBI, and he's going to take charge. So he's going to take charge. So that was the first skirmish. That was the opening battle of the Branch Davidians versus the ATF. And we got a little bit more to go here. We're gonna finish out this thing. Just hang tight, and I'll be right back after these messages. All right, guys. So the siege has started. The media, once this Jeff Jamar guy takes charge, this marshmallow-headed Jeff Jamar from the FBI takes over on day 4. He pushes the media back, all the way back, and then they roll in from Fort Hood. They roll in some Humvees and some equipment. They move in at least 2 60-class combat engineer vehicles, which are tanks. I'm going to talk a lot about them later because I know something about them. I think they also roll in a tank, like a wrecker or like a retrieval vehicle, and at least a couple Bradleys from Bradley fighting vehicles from Fort Hood. So let's talk about this for a minute. The Bradleys are called Bradley fighting vehicles. They're not really tanks because their cannons aren't big enough to qualify as tanks. I think they have some kind of 25 millimeter automatic, and then whatever coax thing that they have. Basically, it's like an armored personnel carrier with just like a little bit bigger of a dick. and probably some stronger armor up front. Now in all the detailed stuff that they talk about afterwards, like I said, there was like at least 3 Senate hearings about this. 2 famously in 1995. They said that when the Army forked these vehicles over, they none of their weapons were functional. So either they didn't give them bullets, or they took parts out. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means. I never read the reports. I'm just saying what the people fucking said. So these Bradley fighting vehicles, they look like tanks to a layperson. You'd look at it and you'd be like, it's got a turret. It's a fucking tank. It's not. This is just called a fighting vehicle. Now the other things that they sent, these they're called CEVs, Combat Engineer Vehicles. They're like these Vietnam era 60 class behemoth tanks. So it's like, this is before like the M1s. This is, they were on the battlefield at the same time, I guess, and in the Gulf War, I guess they would be. But they're not they are not like from the same generation of tanks. Like, this thing is like, it has more in common with a T-62 than it has with an M1 Abrams. But so it's got a couple features. It's got the spinning rims, and it has a couple, you press the button and the thumbtacks come out the back. And so what it is it's a tank. I believe it's three-man thing. It has like the lateral controls. It has a blade that it could use to push dirt, or in this case, as we'll see later, cars and debris and burning buildings. So it uses that blade. It also has a boom, so it can like lift the boom and use it as a pulley system to help recover items, or to, move stuff. Like, whatever you have that wench, whatever you rednecks have that wench on the front of your fucking pickup truck for, that's what this thing has the boom for. But it's like a lot cooler than your pickup truck. Now, the last piece of equipment that these things had, and like they said, it was unusable. Actually, thank God that this thing wasn't used, because it's like the granddaddy of motherfuckers. Is this tank has a very small barrel, and you look at it and you're like, well, it doesn't look right. Like, what is it? And like, you'll hear, like, if you watch Waco, The Big Lie, parts 1 and 2, they speculate that it's some kind of flamethrower, which is ridiculous. It's not a flamethrower. It's just a short barrel. You have a long barrel because you have rifling that helps you aim. It's like throwing a spiral on a football. You know what I'm saying? This thing has a short barrel because it doesn't even shoot bullets or missiles or tank ammunition rounds. It shoots a wad of C4. It's probably about the size of a basketball, and you load it up and you shoot this wad of C4 out of this tiny barrel, and it spins like a football as it's going. And it lands and explodes, but it's not like a direct attack weapon. It's not used for, like, you're not going to engage a tank with this weapon, at least not in optimal circumstance. I'm not going to say it never happened, but you use it to clear obstacles. You use it to clear your anti-mobility obstacles. So if you run into a minefield, one of your options, if you have one of these combat engineer vehicles, is you can shoot a fucking wad of C4 at the landmine field and cause enough trauma to the geography to push the landmines out of the way so you could breach it, or to set the landmines off, or if there's a concertina wire fence or barbed wire fence, this thing you don't want to run your tank through there, because your tank treads, it might fall off. Like, there's some crazy shit that could happen to that. But you could use this fucking thing just to blow a hole through all that shit. Anyhow, the only reason I'm saying this is because if you guys follow up and you watch these the Big Lie documentaries, the Big Lie 1 and 2 documentaries, which a lot of this information came from as well. Like, I want you to know, because they really touch on if this combat engineer vehicle has they think that this thing's a fucking flamethrower. It's not a flamethrower on it at all. So I'm just trying to clear that, All right, so where am I at? Oh, Posse Comitatus is a law. It's an act that was passed in 1878, and it's all about why you can't use the U.S. military on foreign or on domestic soil against citizens. The military is trained to find, fix, and kill the bad guy. They're not worried about trampling all over your civil rights like cops are, right? So you're not supposed to be able to use military equipment, military personnel against this. So we're going to get into Posse Comitatus a lot, especially after action review. There's some documents that's been declassified that kind of points to this idea of 6 to 10 Delta Force guys actually being on the ground at Waco, engaging the Branch Davidians in a firefight, and I think that is crazy. So, not that I don't believe it happened. I'm just saying it's crazy that Chet, the fucking frog woman, Janet Reno, will let it happen. So we already kind of violated the Posse Comitatus. These things, the helicopters had machine guns. That's pretty much, proven. The Bradley fighting vehicles and the combat engineer vehicles are there. Another thing that they did is they cut all the communications from the compound and they plugged it all into the FBI negotiator. But the problem is that the negotiation team was fucking everything up. They would be on these long conversations and they'd be like, okay, hey, look, we had a good dialogue tonight, so we're not going to turn the lights off on you. And then, like, half an hour later, the technical guys would turn the lights off. Or turn the electricity off. Or they were like, hey, well, we said that we were going to do this, and then, 3 minutes later, the technical guys would go ahead and do what the negotiation guys just said they weren't going to do. And a great thing of this is, in the Truth Revealed documentary, they were on the phone with the Davidian that seemed to be like their lead negotiator, and the guy, the ATF guy or the FBI guy was like, no, there wasn't any machine guns in the helicopter. And the guy's like, what are you fucking talking about? There were machine guns in the helicopter. They were shooting at us. And he was like, well, there was guys in the helicopter. And they were like, well, did the guys have machine guns? And he basically made the guy kind of confess on the recorded tape that they were taking fire from the helicopter. So there's your Posse Comitatus right there. Even if you buy that the Bradleys didn't have bullets, even if you buy that there was no C4 rounds in the combat engineer vehicle, which obviously there wasn't. They could have solved that. They could have solved the problem from a football field away 59 days earlier. Okay, so what they started doing like psyops on these guys. They did they put flooded stadium lights into the compound. They set up big speakers, and they were playing like weird music, and they were playing a sound of like a rabbit slaughterhouse. And they were just playing these sounds of rabbits getting slaughtered, which is really fucking fucked up. Well, we're here just to save the kids. let's play these rabbits getting tortured. They'll probably really like us for that. And they also played whoever did it, the Nancy Sinatra, These Boots Are Made for Walking. They'd play that. They'd play The Boots Are Made for Walking. The other thing that they did is they wanted proof that the kids were okay, so they would send a videotape and a video camera in, and you could find these videos too where Koresh or whoever. I think the guy's name is Steve something, like the main negotiator guy. But they would like talk to the kids and then whatever, and they would send the tapes back out. Well, the negotiation team would watch these tapes and they'd be like, we can never let these get out to the public because it would give them tons of sympathy. So it turns out that this is something that Chet, the frog woman Reno, is going to lie about a lot, during these hearings, where she's like, no, we asked them to send like proof of life out of the kids, and he wouldn't videotape anything. He wouldn't give us any access to the kids or let us know that the kids are all right. And it's a lie. Like, it's a fucking lie. So, while this other stuff's being happened, the FBI establishes 2 hidden sniper positions, one of which gets used. We actually found the rounds, from it, when the shit goes down. And they also did this other thing where they would call this head negotiator of the Davidians, and they would be like, hey, guess what? Everything's changed. The tactical guys changed everything. We're changed. Now no one's allowed to leave the house. If anyone comes out of the house, we're going to fucking smoke them like a fucking pack of Marlboros. And the guy's like, what? All this time you guys have been trying to get us to come out. Now you're not letting us out? Well, the reason they're not letting them out is because they're about to do some fucked up bullshit. So, while I forgot to mention, while they're all doing this and they're like trying to convince them to come out, like, you'll be treated professionally and everything's okay, and we'll just take you and there'll be a fair trial. Well, all the time they're doing it, all these FBI and ATF guys are out there surrounded the fucking compound, and they're all like mooning the windows and fucking flipping them off, and they're writing shit like, they're like sneaking up to the windows and writing like, we see you, in the fucking dirt in the windows. Another thing to mention about this is this siege lasted 51 days. And you have to think about this, like, no matter how much food and stuff they had stored, and no matter how much ammo and stuff that they had stored, during that first incursion in February, when they were shooting, the helicopters shot their water. They had a gigantic, like, water tower. Not gigantic, not like King Kong, but they had a water tower back there that would collect the rainwater or whatever and purify it on its way out. And the helicopters fucking popped holes in it. So these guys they were suffering for water in the high plains of Texas. So whenever it rained, you could see them like putting little buckets out of their window, like just reaching their hands out real fast and like placing buckets out of their window. So they were like operating on, the one guy says they were operating probably on like less than 8 ounces of water a day. They rationed all this rainwater out. So hanging in there for 51 days is pretty fucking amazing. For just this bunch of gun hoarding, gun stockpiling Christians. All right, sorry about that, guys. Gotta try to pay the bills. All right, so the main tenet of this Branch Davidian religion was the idea of this gigantic war to end all wars between the Davidians and an army of an evil government that they called Babylon. So this is playing like right into their hands. This kind of reminds me of the Cathar Crusade. Once they got all these Cathars and they were torturing them, like how it kind of their belief echoed in reality, like where they're trapped in this physical body being like tortured and they couldn't like escape their divine spark, couldn't just jump out of their body and go home. This kind of reminds me of that thing on like a kind of like a real macro level where like since 1935 these group of people have been preaching about like this gigantic war and how these chariots with fire pouring out of them and stuff is gonna come in from Babylon, and there's going to be this gigantic war, and they're going to be able to walk through fire, and when they walk through the fire, they'll be delivered, because in Isaiah it says, who could live in eternity of fire? So, and so here it is, dudes. This is what they've been working up from since 1935. It's the main event. It's 51 days later since the original assault on Mount Carmel. It's April 19th, 1993, 6 a.m. The sun's starting to rise, and as it rises, on the horizons in the dark, they can hear the diesel engines pumping, and it is two Army 60 class combat engineer vehicles with their booms lowered to create like a joust, were popping holes into the compound. They were saying that they were popping these holes into the compound to create a place to inject tear gas. I don't know what's wrong with the glass. I don't know what's wrong with the windows at this point in time, but they're just popping holes. They're just driving around, popping holes into this thing, into this building. And they're injecting CS gas into the building. They're using some sort of CS gas insertion device. They called it like an M5 or something. I never heard of this thing. Where they're like popping it in, and like gas would like pour out of it. And the whole time, over like the PA system that they have surrounding the compound, they're playing like this guy, and he's talking, and he's like, "We are in the process of putting tear gas into the building. We are not assaulting you. We are in the process of putting tear gas into the building. We are not assaulting you. We are in the process of putting tear gas into the building. We are not assaulting you." At one point, they're like, you can never come out. And then now they're like, you're just going to have to deal with all this tear gas. Yeah, so there was some sort of tear gas gimmick attached to the boom that they were using to like joust it into the building. The plan was for this gassing to last for 48 hours. However, they used so much of it, they ran out of gas at around 10. So they started at 6 and they ran out at 10. I mean, who is the fucking logistics officer for this? I don't know, but so they were flying war in by helicopter from Houston while they were waiting. And also this thing, like you'll read in the documentaries and stuff, they call it tear gas, and you'll read this thing tear gas over and over again. It wasn't really tear gas, it was CS gas. And CS gas isn't really a gas, it's a particulate. It's like a powder. And they have to use like some kind of agent to disperse it. And one of the things that they use to disperse it is a grenade. You pull the pin, you drop the spoon, and it propels the gas out there. The thing is like there's a spark, like there's an explosive that pushes that out. You will not find a grenade that doesn't say it's not pyrotechnic. Even gas grenade or even smoke grenades have a certain amount of spark and fire that comes out with them. I don't know. I think I might be converting to a Davidian because I keep saying fire. Who among us can walk through the fire? So this tear gas is flooding into the building. These kids and these babies that are in there do not have gas masks. Some of the adults have gas masks because they have a weapons stockpile. They sell shit at gun shows. They're probably going to have a gas mask or two laying around. I have a gas mask in my studio laying around just in case the fucking ATF knocks on my door. But it won't last after 6 hours. I'd have to clean the filter somehow. I'd have to get in there and change the filter out somehow. And dudes, I've had to deal with pepper spray. I've had to deal with that pepper spray that the fucking cops use. I've had to deal with CS gas, and CS gas is the worst. The worst. It's the fucking worst. It makes you feel like someone shot non-fun Tabasco sauce into all the holes on your face. Like, it's terrible. Okay. So what happens is they started pushing all the cars. All the kids that were there had like go-karts, and they had a go-kart track. And these guys fucking destroyed all the go-karts, and they pushed all the cars into these piles, and somehow a fire starts. Actually most of the debate that you hear from this thing is who started the fire. In 95, in 93, a lot of folks think that the ATF or the FBI started the fire. with the CS canisters or whatnot. In 95, there seems to be a pretty good consensus that David Koresh was signaling that he was going to burn the building down if they came in. So who knows? Apparently, when some of these guys got caught, they all smelled like gas and stuff, like they were going to light themselves on fire. So it's really open for debate. Okay, so that's pretty much the story. A lot of fucking people died. I think there was 22 kids and a bunch of adults died on the last assault, which wasn't an assault. They were running. They were tearing their house down, pumping CS gas into it, going, "We are not assaulting you." So it's not an assault. They said it wasn't. But a lot of fucking people died, and there's some pretty grisly video of these tanks just running people over and just dragging them around the yard because they're caught in their tracks somehow. And there's a lot of, I should have wrote the guy's name down. He's got a lot of heart-wrenching testimony, he lost his daughter, and there's some fucked up shit about where they were keeping these kids in this underground bunker where they were flame awning this underground bunker, just boiling the people inside, whether it was by accident or not. So there's plenty of stuff. It's a huge fucking thing. I can't get through with it all right now. I'm already over my time. But let's cut to 5 days before the fire started. There was a meeting between Webster Hubbell, who is Chelsea Clinton's dad. If you Google search Webster Hubbell and Chelsea Clinton and just hit the images, it's plainly clear that Webster Hubbell is Chelsea Clinton's dad. And then the between Webb, Vince Foster, and Hillary Clinton are the three stooges of this fucking thing. Vince Foster was there, and Janet, the frog person, Chet Reno, was there. And they met with a Delta Force and a Special Forces commander 5 days before the shit went down. And they have this previously classified document that confirms that over 10 Delta Force observers were on site. But there's anecdotal evidence that's saying that they were more than observers. They were taking action, helping, and supporting the ATF or the FBI, their thing. And it kind of makes sense because the Delta Force guys are all about hostage rescue, so they understand about exfilling and all this kind of stuff. But if this is true, it's totally breaking posse comitatus, which I'm just going to say it one more time. Posse comitatus. There's been aerial FLIR cam footage of this final raid taking place, where you see tactical dudes in super effective tactical dudes in firefights rolling off these tanks, doing protective formations with these tanks, and engaging Branch Davidians in firefights. So you can find all that, and that this is the Waco new evidence revealed thing, where they spend a lot of time talking about this FLIR footage and stuff. So if you're interested in this, I would say that would be a good one to watch if you don't want to read the book. And just wrapping up, this last thing is Vince Foster wound up dead. He was suicided, apparently. He's one of the many pieces of human wreckage left in the Clinton era, by the Clinton era and the Clinton legacy. And there was stuff, apparently anecdotal evidence that he was they lied to me, the Delta Force, they lied to me, I don't know what I'm going to do. He wound up taking 2 shots to the back of the head in some park in Washington, D.C. It said he was suicided. But as soon as Vince Foster was dead, Hillary sent this aide to his office to take a box of Waco files, and they hid them in the White House residence, and they got this guy up in front of the congressional thing, and they were like, "What happened?" And he was like, "She sent me in there to grab this box." He's like, "Did you know what was in the box?" And he's like, "Yeah, they were Waco files. That's what I was there to get." "Well, what'd you do with them?" I put them in the residence of the White House." And then no one mentions it again. No one mentions one more fucking word of it. So, I mean, there's a lot there to chew on. But in my book, this is one of those ones that's it's proven, it's believable. You gotta watch out for this government. And another thing that you have to do is, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and all this other kind of stuff. So, this reflects in my book some places. Whenever, like I did in the third non-standard assembly book, I did like a riff on William Jefferson Clinton and Troopergate, where he had like a bunch of state troopers working for him and doing some shady bullshit for him. So like this doesn't actually have like much of a bearing into my. There's no like one-on-one comparison into my comic books, but this thing's always fascinated me, and the way that the American people rallied around the FBI and the ATF in this situation was wild. And like right after it all happened, like they did like a made-for-TV movie where like the ATF people were heroically drawn in somehow to like this ambush where they died, and it was like the horns and like this music, and like the Davidians were some kind of like depraved sex cultists and stuff, and it's just wild, man. Anyhow,
Stigmata Studios presents The Scorpion Strikes. In this comic book, a terrorist called the Scorpion is transported to a secret CIA prison. He quickly turns the tables on the guards and administrators and releases the prisoners. A well-armed anarchist called Constituent Zero assembles a team and fights to take the prison back. This story is a dark political action thriller. The Scorpion's actions set the stage perfectly for the Jin Jihad. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com. Stigmata Studios presents The Test of the Scorpion. In this comic book, while the Jin Jihad is raging on one side of the city, the terrorist called the Scorpion sets a secondary attack in motion as he obtains a small tactical nuclear bomb. A mysterious, ever-living warrior called Cyrus the Dead Guy steps forward to test the faith of the Scorpion and his lunatic followers. This is an action-adventure story. It's a bit of swashbuckler that wraps up the Jihad stories. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, The Test of the Scorpion, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
Sorry for going so long. If you guys want to support, the best thing to do to support the show is to buy some comic books. Even if you're not a comic book guy, you might dig my style. If you're listening to the show, and if you've been listening to the show and you get an idea of kind of like what the stuff that I talk about, if it interests you, maybe some of the stuff in the comic books will interest you too. So anyhow, not being heavy-handed, I know I made you guys listen to a bunch of fucking ads already. I hate that. I wish I didn't have to do it. But I am John Towers. You go to stigmatastudios.com to find all my bullshit. I don't know what I'm going to do next week. I got to figure it out. But I had fun talking to you about the Branch Davidian Massacre in Waco, Texas this evening. And thank you guys very much. Oh, Stigmata Studios on Instagram, Stigmata Studios on Facebook, and Johnny Axe, JONNYAXX on Twitter, and Stigmata Studios on Twitter as well. So you can find me at both places. Thank you. I hope that I helped you get through your day in some kind of less shitty way than normal. groovy, baby. Dig